Здравствуйте, Ваше Святейшество. У меня вопрос такой. Как буддисты мы отвергаем крайность этернализма и концепцию самосущности, в частности, концепцию атмана. Мы принимаем концепцию наитончайшего сознания, которое путешествует из жизни в жизнь. И в таком случае можем ли мы говорить, что это наитончайшее сознание было порождено? И каковы же, можем ли мы назвать те причины, которые породило это сознание, наитончайшее сознание? И если это как раз тот вопрос, который очень скрыт, наверное, от нас, какие учителя древности наиболее близко, по вашему мнению, подошли к этому вопросу? Какие тексты нужно изучать людям, которые хотят в этом разобраться? Спасибо.
Sorry.
What happened?
No, I'm sorry. I just. Извините. Простите, пожалуйста, можете еще раз?
Да,
просто...
если кратко, то можем ли мы назвать причины, породившие наитончайшее сознание, и какие учителя древности описали об этом?
In Buddhism, we say about the most subtle mind. Could you say what are the reasons of this most subtle mind, or is it a hidden kind of knowledge? And are there ancient Buddhist scholars who were talking about it? What Buddhist scholars were talking or teaching about the origins of this most subtle mind?
So with regard to consciousness, as we had this discussion yesterday, these flowers, of course, if you try to trace the origin of the substance of these flowers, there's no beginning. Because if you were to posit a beginning of this, you will have to face logical consequences as well. So although when certain things can be proved, even though you may not be able to prove directly giving reason, but then by eliminating other possibilities, and then you can actually come to the conclusion. So if consciousness didn't come from a cause, then we have to say that consciousness has no cause. So there are those of the conditions, three conditions: unwavering condition, and impermanent condition, and then the potential. And so if the consciousness comes from something which is not consciousness, then you have to posit the first moment of a consciousness, but this is not possible. And so the first moment of consciousness as such cannot be posited. And so with regard to even scientists, when we go through the dissolution process at the time of and within ourselves, the coarser levels of mind, which is dependent on our brain, stops. Because the brain stops working, and therefore those consciousnesses which depend on their brain stops. And so this is something that the scientists are able to see. And so the scientists have begun to now research on the subtle mind. Many of the things that science has found so far is not the case that they have found them not to exist, but that they have simply not found them. And so there are things, of course, which were not known to us before, but that become knowledge later. that we come to know about them later. There are many cases like that. Once I was in Germany, and
통원디 내가 다시 좀 말이지. 체리부 타네 그게 지 통니. 그게 주대버지. 답은 전부 지지 이거지. 통줄 통용도.
And so what the scientists don't see, are not able to observe, doesn't mean that they can prove that such a thing do not exist. They cannot decisively say that. But there are things that the scientists have discovered, and then these can actually be called verified, and therefore we can actually take them. And one journalist told me that the scientists have actually come to the conclusion that there's no past and future life. And I told him that, the journalist, that that's not the case. What we have to know, what we know is that the scientists have not yet found or proved the past and future lives, or they have not seen. And then there are ways to come to a conclusion by eliminating the other possibilities through which you come to the conclusion that this is the case.
Буддист должен отбросить свои обеты и взять в руки оружие, например, для защиты близких или своей страны.
Вопрос, есть ли такие ситуации, да? Когда это необходимо. The question is, are there situations when the Buddhist should take arms and just to protect his country or his family, and to do some violent actions, and just leave the abolish the vows, like leave the vows, the Buddhist, and leave the Buddhist vows. Like abandon the Buddhist vows and take violent actions.
I think not only Buddhist concept, but I think today's reality.
So it's not only about Buddhist keeping ethics in Buddhism, but we have to what really is the benefit of killing one another. So in the last century, through war and battles, over 200 million people were killed. What use was that? It has caused more problems and more suffering. And then in the beginning of this 21st century, we still see some violence. That is because of the past negligence of not engaging or indulging in this violence. So with selfish motive, people have engaged or indulged in violence, and what we see now is the symptom of that. And it's not, I mean, what is happening today in the world, people harming each other, hurting each other through violence, I mean, cannot be blamed. They cannot be blamed, but we have neglected in the past century. So that negligence has to be blamed. So we, all of us, have the right to live happily, peacefully, and harming and indulging in in violence does not help. Because once you hurt someone through violence, you may be able to finish some people, but then their relatives, friends, and others who are related to them will be hurt. And so whether you are able to say that some of your violence are justified or not, you must not engage in violence, harming others. In the case of, for example, Iraq crisis, previous one of the previous American President George Bush. I mean, he's a very close friend of mine. He's a very good person on man on a human level, but because of his use of force, of course, the motivation was very good to spread democracy and freedom in Iraq, but his action became violent, and therefore, the situation really became worse. Lots of troubles. So whether you can, whether what you do is called something that you can justify or not, just engaging in violence itself is not good. So in the past, of course, when someone is your enemy, you can actually, if you do something to, if you did something to overcome that person or the community, of course, that may be easy. But today, that's not the case. Both the parties involved in fighting lose. And therefore, when there is some conflict, you must engage in dialogue. So you have to consider their rights and their interests based on this recognition that we are same in being humans. And therefore, you need to think about mutual benefit. So this is the time now that we are in, that we should think like that. We should not think of one side, victory for one side and defeat for the other. That's outdated. That kind of mentality is outdated.
Вопрос такой, часто приходится слышать то, что при исполнении добрых дел человек приобретает для себя тем самым заслуги. Вопрос в том, если все время думать только об заслугах для себя, не получишь ли в итоге взыскание? Да. То, что если человек только
Нет,
думает...
последнее, что вы сказали, не получится.
В итоге взыскание. Ну, то, что концентрирует все внимание, да.
When you do something good, they say that when you do something good, you accumulate merits. But if the person thinks about accumulating merits, thinks about it, can it be bad by, isn't it selfish, or even if you do something good, but you think of accumulating merits?
This morning we discussed about, explained about bodhicitta. So to serve others' interests, of course, even as beginners, if you could start something, it would be, if you could do something with good health, it would be really, you would be able to serve others better. So, although taking care of your health by taking medicine and good food and so forth may seem to be doing something selfish, but the purpose is to serve others. Therefore, it is good for others. So, indirectly, it actually has to do with serving others' interests. It's an altruistic act. So without this altruistic attitude, if you actually think of doing negative things to others, then that's not good. Even in Tibet, there were some masters who have said that may the evil beings live a short life. There were such prayers, and therefore, if you are able to serve others well, then you could keep up with your health, your wealth, and then also your workings. Your works and so forth should be good. And your success.
Добро и красота. Как красота, эстетика могут помочь в духовном пробуждении и освобождении?
In the Western philosophy, they talk about three aspects: truth, goodness, kindness, and beauty. how beauty can help in spiritual development.
를 이동해야 돼.
So beauty, of course,
제가 이동와.
beauty in the sense of call your behavior, beautiful behavior, or your facial expression, or a beautiful sound. I mean, there are different things like that that are beautiful and attractive. So if you are honest in your dealing with others, your speech, I mean, talking with others, your expression, physical expression would be beautiful. But if you're very selfish, you remain very selfish, think only of your own benefit, and even go to the length of disregarding others, whatever may happen, then your beautiful expressions of your voice and called body would be just they would be false. And then others would come to know that if, I mean, as time goes by, months and weeks and months go by, people would know that you are being hypocrite. So without being hypocrite, then if you are honest and transparent, then all your expressions of speech, your thinking, your physical expression would be beautiful.
How beauty, like beautiful things, can help in the spiritual development.
Yes.
So, if you have an altruistic attitude to help others, then your expression, your body, speech, and mind, actions of them will be beautiful. Otherwise, with the covetousness, with the malicious thoughts, and the thought to deceive others and so forth, I mean, your expressions of physical and verbal expressions would be negative, not beautiful. And so mainly from out of the body, speech, and mind, the state of mind is the most important thing. And therefore, with a good state of mind, good thought, good intention, then your physical and verbal expressions would be good.
Последний вопрос, пожалуйста.
Oh, one lady.
Там вот девушка хотела задать вопрос сзади.
Then, last two questions.
Последние два вопроса.
Вопрос касательно молитвы о зарождении Бодхичитты. Я хочу понять смысл последнего абзаца. Покуда длится пространство и живут, пусть я останусь в этом мире. Это подразумевает, что тот человек, который говорит данные слова, имеет намерение рождаться, пока, грубо говоря, страдания в этом мире есть. Это имеется в виду?
The question is about the last verses of the question is about the last verses of this prayer of generating bodhicitta. As long as the space remains, can I remain to relieve suffering? Does it mean that this person who makes this prayer has an intention to stay in this space until all the others are relieved from suffering? Is it the meaning of this?
That's right. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, and until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the beings. It's not a lie. You are talking about training your mind, and with that, within that, to train, to develop this sense of caring about others. And your body, your speech, and your mind are dedicated for the others' well-being. And therefore you see, you see this great benefit in thinking about the well-being of others, caring of others. We are not talking about you're doing so in for one life or 1 year or not even one eon, one great eon, but for eons and eons. And therefore, isn't it good that when you could dedicate that you dedicate yourself for the benefit of others until the end of space? So, of course, in order to have that kind of determination, you need to know about the benefit of bodhicitta and the fault and defects of the cherishing self. And then, with these, I mean, your training of bodhicitta would be good. Otherwise, it would just be like some kind of composing some poetry.
Your Holiness, I have a question which constitutes of 3 related parts. So, I would like you to tell us what is love and what is affection, how to distinguish these two and the difference, and how to practice to not to be attached to anything but still to care about things.
So didn't I actually talk about this yesterday? So this love or compassion that we are talking about, that comes through training our mind. I actually talked about this yesterday. Biologically, we need to we survive depending on our parents and also the community that we live in. So there's this biological aspect of our love or affection, which more or less is also dependent on others' attitude towards us, and therefore it is kind of tinged with attachment. And so this kind of tinged or partial or biased love cannot extend towards others whom you consider as your adversary or enemy. So whether someone has some attitude or intention to harm yourself or help yourself, you could still extend your love towards that, and that kind of love, regardless of their attitude towards you, whether it's bad or good, just for the reason that sentient beings do not want suffering but want happiness, in that they are same. I mean, when you could have that kind of attitude and extend your love towards others, that's not biased. Usually, we actually take into account the other's attitude towards us and then express or react with love or which is biased, and therefore, in order to, in the process of developing bodhicitta, this partial kind of a love which is biased, is actually an obstacle, and therefore you need to develop the sense of cherishing others over oneself by seeing this fault of cherishing oneself.
Now time moving. Now, in any way, now this is now last question.
Самый последний вопрос теперь.